Hey everybody, welcome to DBS Films Podcast. My name is Kellen. With me as always is my brother Brendan, and together we make movies with a DBS Films. Today's episode, we're going to go ahead and cover part one of a very, very critical element to the movie making and filmmaking industry, which is marketing. And unfortunately, we find a lot of the indie filmmakers out there. This is something where whether it's they don't want to dabble in this or they just underestimate it, it's probably one of the most lacking areas when it comes to being a successful indie film studio. So what we wanted to do is go ahead and highlight in this first part how to get a marketable movie, how to get a movie, that's going to get picked up by distribution and how that's going to get pushed through based on the overall marketing of it. And then part two, we're going to go into more details of things that you can do as an indie filmmaker to assist in this marketing process, build your community, and go from there. As always, be sure to take a look at our Discord channel online. It is the place to be because we make movies for our fans with our fans. So if you want more behind the scenes access or the ability to audition for our films, go ahead and check it out. So before we begin, I think this is actually probably, as we go into a lot of the different subjects, I think this is probably the area that we have some of the most experience with when it just coming from a business element, understanding marketability. And, we always, when this topic comes up, mention that a lot of people, including other businesses, have this idea wrong where almost, if you build it, they will come, when really any business, any movie, any product at the end of the day, you almost need to be laser focused from the very beginning about who your customer is and how you're going to get to the customer. And I think just in the nature of filmmaking, because it's such a personal creative process, it's very easy for filmmakers to either lose that mindset or just never even have it to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think there's two competitive advantages that DBS Films has over not only other businesses, but just other filmmakers. The first is that we're very, very good at marketing, and we also have the ability to move very, very fast. We make way more movies than anybody else does. Usually, a typical filmmaker, especially on the indie level, will make one movie every 3 to 4 years, where we're about to make 3 movies in 1 year. So I think that's like a big time advantage that we have, but it just really comes down to marketing. The game has changed post COVID. Before COVID, if you're on some kind of platforms, the big time movies, the big time players, they kind of stuck to their own game, which was theatrical releases. They made all their money in the movie theaters. And, when COVID happened, that kind of died off and all these people switched to streaming. So now you're having very large movies that instead of even trying to take a theater run, they're just going straight to streaming. And those movies, when they fall off of Paramount Plus and HBO and Showtime, they end up on Tubi and Amazon and the stuff that you're competing with. So what we've seen in the last 2 years is just a lot of really high budget movies, very popular movies competing with the indie stuff, where maybe 2 years ago on Tubi, as long as you're on the platform, you got your eyeballs, your movie could go up to the top. That's not the case anymore. It's not the case on a lot of platforms. So you've kind of lost that free exposure. And in order to get around that, you have to be very good at marketing. And unfortunately, you can have a very good movie. You have a very good cast, you have very good crew, very good cover art and blurb. But if you're not actively marketing this movie, nobody's going to see it. So, yes, you can build a cult following, but in order to do that, you have to get eyeballs on it first. It has to spread through word of mouth. You have to have grassroots marketing. So I think that's a competitive advantage, that we are very, very good at marketing. We're very good at understanding return on investment, and we understand, what levers to pull to really increase the visibility for these films.
I mean, I definitely agree. And I, again, go back to I don't really see any other indie studio doing it as aggressively or as hands on. And, not saying we're the best at marketing, but with the resources that we have compared to some of the larger films out there who, have teams and teams and agencies are pouring millions of dollars promoting their film, we know what levers that we can kind of do to basically take advantage of the algorithm, take advantage of a lot of different things to set your movie up in the best light. And I think this is something, before we hop into detail, I want this to be as clear as possible to as many filmmakers out there. While making a movie is challenging, getting someone to pick that movie up as distribution and getting people to actually watch the movie are just as big of a challenge. And if you're not aware of that from the very beginning, you are likely going to shoot yourself in the foot every single part of that process. So, to be very clear, this is honestly, if you want to have a consistent filmmaking career where you can monetize and it's not just personal passion projects, this is actually more important than the movie itself. Just in the idea that making sure you have the right content, making sure it's sellable, making sure you can actually push it. So would you agree that, if you don't have that marketing framework in the system, it's going to be nearly impossible for you to have a long-term career that can actually have it pay for itself if you're not focusing on marketing?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, before marketing, it was go to festivals, and festivals now are pay to play. Like, you have to know somebody. There's active people who go out there and, if they are repping your films, if your film is repped by a studio, they can push it in certain film festivals. Film festivals are no longer just indie films. There's high budget movies in there. There's A24 movies. Just go look at the slate that Sundance has. It's all huge studio movies. So that visibility is gone. You've lost the free visibility of just having DVDs in Blockbuster and Best Buy and Walmart. That's, no one really does DVDs anymore other than like true fans and people who really like your movie. And then even on the streaming platforms now, like I just talked about, that stuff's gone. So you have to be able to find your audience. You have to be able to cultivate your audience. You have to be able to put your movie in front of people who are interested and want to watch it. If you can't do that, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, because you have to be able to differentiate yourself from other movies. One way to do that is to make a really, really, really good movie that, other people will review, and they'll kind of go through the blogs and they'll kind of create its own grassroots market kind of, a friend tells a friend to watch this movie, and that's few and far between. Usually when you see that kind of stuff and you think that's what's happening, it's really some studio paying $20 million to push this on a whole bunch of different platforms. To give you an example, the Wednesday dance thing, right? Everyone's going nuts over that. It's the #1 show on Netflix. Everyone really likes it. And there's like, well, maybe people just like Jenna Ortega and how she's dancing. Like, that's viral, right? I guarantee you Netflix paid a absolute ton of money to just absolutely pump the shit out of that video. They knew what they were doing, though. Like, they knew how to market. They knew that was going to be a viral clip that everyone's going to follow. So you gotta kind of take a chip out of Netflix's or a play out of Netflix's playbook here. You don't need to spend millions of dollars, but you have to kind of understand the marketplace and understand where you're going to get your ROI, because those are the fans that you need to cultivate, and those are the fans that you need to get your movie in front of.
Exactly that. And I will say, everyone's like, oh man, wow, this is so convenient that this is happening. It is fully a paid for push by all of the marketing things. As much as people like Jenna Ortega and they want to do that. I mean, same thing with Megan. I don't know if you guys watch like TikTok stuff like that and, love Blumhouse, but man, that was like one of the most forced things I've seen. And next thing you know, people are doing the dances and whatnot. So you're up against that massive marketing behemoth of Hollywood. And a lot of people, I feel like to have this almost kind of like, starry-eyed idea that movies are just kind of made there. It is a marketing behemoth that you're up against in Hollywood, and everything is very, very calculated. So you have to try and figure out what you can do on your end to basically compete with that. So hopping in again in this episode, really just wanted to kind of go over some of the major things that you need. In my opinion, I think there's two levels of marketing, and I'd be curious to see what you think about this. While it's not the only route, typically what you hear about from independent filmmakers is getting to distribution, getting picked up from distribution, basically having their movie pushed out to the major platforms. There's a ton of indie filmmakers out there. For what ends up happening, they basically get turned down from distribution. Then they can do self uploads, and there's different ways around it. But really, I think the big thing that's like kind of the talk right now with indie filmmakers is just getting that distribution. So I think there's two levels of marketing that go into it. luckily they blend together to some degree, but you have your first level, which is marketing to distribution, in the sense that, do you have a marketable thing that someone who is a distributor will take a look at and say, yes, I want this? And then the second level is going to be marketing your film actually to people, like actually to the end consumer. So part two, we'll probably talk a little bit in there, but would you agree that, we've kind of surpassed that first level? We're very confident in our ability to get distribution just because of our track record. But I think, for a while, it took us, it was until our ninth movie that we really got a distribution level. And these are distribution companies that are looking at so many movies every single day. So I think your first task is, how do you actually stand out to them?
Yeah, and I mean, there's different levels of distribution. But as far as like wanting distribution to handle marketing, which is something I hear filmmakers talk about all the time, that's not going to happen anymore. As far as like pitching your movie to platforms and getting better priority placement on platforms, that's what the distribution company is going to do for you. They're going to have these deals so they can negotiate and you can get better deals. But are they going to run Facebook ads? Are they going to run TikTok ads? Are they going to do marketing for your film? They might, but I guarantee you they're not going to do it very efficiently. And they're also going to go with the movies that are making the most money are going to get the most marketing budget, because it's just a mathematical formula is which one's going to give me the best return on investment. So I see a lot of filmmakers saying, well, if I sign with this distribution company and I pay the $50,000 in marketing fees, they're going to push my film out there. And that's a complete myth. What they're going to do is put it on social media, which is Instagram and Facebook, not even promoted posts. And maybe they'll make a new trailer for you. Maybe they'll do some cover art for you, but there's nothing to justify that $50,000. And that's just the state of the union right now. So, I mean, that's the first thing, is just, you have to understand which distribution company you're going to sign and what they're going to do for you. But even to get to that point, your movie has to be, technically sound. In our first 8 movies were not technically sound. There's various issues with them, whether it's audio, whether it's visual. And I think a lot of independent filmmakers, this is kind of where they are, where their movie might be good. Like some of the stories that we told in the first 8 were decent. And I do think that if I would have shot them now, they would have a good shot at, getting signed with distribution. But we were just making so many mistakes that, obviously we can't get them up on better platforms. So the first thing, and my biggest advice, is just make sure everything you're doing is technically sound. It sounds easy, and it's really not. Even the last movie, The Shapeshifter, there's different pieces in there that are just, something's wrong with it. It's very hard to make an 1.5-hour movie on an under $50,000 budget and have everything turn out perfectly. But for the most part, that was where, I'd always try and make sure you guys are making technically sound movies, because that increases your opportunities to get more distribution, go on more platforms to get more revenue. If you kind of mess up a little bit, you're going to be, relegated to YouTube or some of the Film Hub channels. It's going to be, your options are just limited as far as like revenue. So I keep that in mind. But yeah, I do think, it's a twofold thing. You have to make sure your movie is technically sound. You got to be able to market it and, work with distribution companies, because you got to remember, they have thousands of different options. It should be, why should they choose your movie to actually spend their time and money on?
No, that's a great point. And I think, just to kind of, hit that point home, really it's that twofold element. One, it's having a movie and an idea that they see right away is pushable. And then the second thing, is making sure it's technically sound so there's not issues. So let's hop in more to kind of having an idea that's pushable. This is a question I get asked a lot. Why do you guys just do horror movies? Will you do any other genre? And first off, I think it's great that we do like horror movies and it's a fun one, but there really is a specific reason for us doing this. I think one of the most basic ones is, you can really shoot yourself in the foot with the type of movie or genre that you make. A lot of indie filmmakers will create just some type of genre that doesn't really have a demand for it. Or they'll enter a genre that has very specific requirements. If you have an action movie, who's your action star? Who's going to get you to click on this? So I think, the first thing I want to talk about is understand that the type of movie that you are making is literally one of the most important things to marketing, and you can make it harder or easier for yourself. We see a lot of people, like I'll give a good example kind of it. a sci-fi movie is going to be a completely different breed than a comedy, than a romance, than any of these. And the reason we recommend horror so much is because the built-in nature of horror ends up making it a lot easier for you to reach a built-in audience of horror fans on a lower budget that's more marketable. And it's one of those things where don't try and swim upstream right away. If your goal is to make more movies, you simply want to keep making the movie. You shouldn't be worried about the type of movie or something there, because you'll still get the practice from it. So you want to talk about how your genre is really one of the first leading indicators of, are you even approaching a marketable situation with your overall concept?
Yeah, and I think not only do you have to know your genre, but you have to kind of know your subgenres as well. Like sci-fi is huge. Like if there's alien stuff, those people are going to expect, certain tropes. Especially for horror. For horror, there's usually two different branches, which is the dark and gritty and very realistic, and then the 70s and 80s horror movies that are like a little bit more lighthearted, have drugs, alcohol, and sex. And both of those are completely different. They play by different rules. For romance, there's buddy romance, there's, chick flick, there's holiday romance movies, and all those, you know, specific subgenres, those audiences are looking for a specific thing. And if you violate the rules of what those people are looking for, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And I think that's something that we struggled with the first 8 movies, where we kind of mixed some of the dark and gritty stuff with more upbeat, lighthearted stuff, and it caused a lot of issues. And I think it really took us until, I think, Murder House and beyond is when we kind of figured that out. It's like, all right, you got to figure out what movie you're making here, and you got to stick to it. So I see so many filmmakers when I watch indie movies where they're just mixing the top level genre. So it's like a romance, sci-fi, dystopia movie. And that's not even getting into the granular subgenre stuff. So if you're at a top level, you're mixing genres, you're going to be in a lot of trouble very, very quickly, because it's very difficult to market that kind of stuff, because the people who like sci-fi will click on it, read the blurb, and be like, well, this looks like a little bit of romance, and back out. The people who want romance are going to click on it and be like, this is sci-fi, I want to back out. And it sounds counterintuitive. I see a lot of filmmakers say, well, if I include all these genres, it'll expand my reach. Like that, I can capture the romance people, capture the sci-fi people, I capture the thriller people. And it's the complete opposite. You're going to alienate those people. You want to be as granular and as specific as possible, which is why the found footage community is really great, because those found footage people are looking for found footage movies. That is what they want. It's very specific, and that's what they want. The minute you start adding music, the minute you start adding cinematic elements, they turn it off. And that's a great example of, you want to be very granular and specific for your audience. Do not try to cast a wide net, because the minute you do, you're going to alienate a lot of people, and they're going to turn your movie off, or they're going to back out, which is going to penalize you in these algorithms.
Exactly that. I mean, it really is the case where you want to be very clear. You want to have a subject that's like a good topic, and you want to stick to it too. I think there's so many times you'll watch a movie and like you'll kind of be like, well, this is actually like not really quite this movie based on like the trailer or based on this. I guarantee you someone within either a distribution or production element of it was like, hey, we need to kind of configure this and pull it this way. So with that being said, I think one of the major things that really helps us out with, again, the first element of this, which is basically getting to the distribution and just setting it up. You have your idea, you have your movie, and now let's talk about the most important part of your movie, which is going to be the movie poster, and then the movie trailer, and then the movie blurb. So that is by far one of the things. And I think, honestly, I would say from either people who discover us or people who kind of start getting used to us, we'll take a little bit of flack from them. They're like, why are you always doing this type of poster look? Or what's up with this crazy name that you have here? Hey, this blurb wasn't, really quite like, I think you could have done something different or there. Well, we split test everything. And we let just the power of marketing itself decide for us. So I think this is something we see a ton, especially from first-time filmmakers. though whatever their name is might make zero sense whatsoever, might be the worst name ever, but they're so attached to it. Might be the best name ever to them. Again, it's all subjective, but a lot of filmmakers will hold fast on these things when they really can prevent them from selling their movie. Not going with a title or not going with a trailer or not going with something because you like it, but it's going to hurt you, is something that's super critical, happens all the time. And I think people really misunderestimate just how much it happens in Hollywood. Everyone likes to think the name of this was like set from the very beginning. Those have gone through millions of dollars of split testing. And if you're not out there actively doing this process, it's going to be something that just really hinders you. And if you're trying to go against this process, I mean, you're really off to like the wrong foot. So do you want to talk about how critical those three elements are and why we do split testing for them?
Yeah, I'd probably say the best business advice that I've ever received, and this is not just for film, this is just business in general, is you are not your audience. What I like is probably not the same as my customers. And that's completely fine. I completely understand that. But I think that rule and understanding that rule will put you in a much better place to succeed with marketing. I understand that film is very personal. You're putting your heart and soul into making this production. It's like having a child. You want to name your child, right? That makes sense. The problem is that the name that I want is not going to be the name that everybody else wants. And to give you an example with the Shapeshifter movie, I had 500 different movie titles. Ones I probably had maybe 50 or 60 that I really thought were cool. Like I really love Shift. There's a lot of really cool other titles in there. So I did that and I split test maybe another 450 that I just got from, name generators, synonyms, and just similar things that I could possibly kind of figure out. And I absolutely hate the title that won, but the title that won is overwhelmingly the most popular. I've tried probably 20 or 25 different tests to try and beat this because I didn't want this thing to win so bad. I was actively trying to make it lose. And the title that won, people just love it. And I don't like it at all. But you know what? It doesn't matter. What I like is making movies, and I like getting my money back, and I like making another movie. And if that's your mindset, you got to go with the ones that people like. So that's just a great example of this is a movie title that I particularly don't like, but I'm letting it go and accepting it because the people who like horror movies, and we've put it in front of maybe 100,000, 200,000 people, they really, really like it. And the same thing with the covers. Would I like to stop making floating cabin covers? Yes, I would love for something to beat the floating cabin. I split test another 200 different movie poster concepts. Once again, we have a floating cabin. For whatever reason, people see the floating cabin, they love the floating cabin, and I use a floating cabin. The blurbs, I have a little bit more leeway. I do enjoy writing the blurbs, and I think the blurbs that usually win are shorter, they're punctual, and I do like the blurbs. So I don't really care about that. And the trailers, I feel like we do a pretty good job of doing trailers. The ones that I usually feel are the better ones are usually the winners. So I feel like my audience and myself are more aligned with the trailers. But when it comes to the covers and when it comes to the actual titles of the movie, I couldn't be further away from having the same mindset as my audience, but that's completely fine. I have no qualms. I'm not losing any sleep at night over this title. The Murder House got a lot of flack on Facebook saying like a child created this title. That's fine. Whatever, man, because that movie did an absolute amount of work. It did so well. If I could sit here and make as many murder houses as I possibly can, I would be absolutely over the moon. So I don't care if it sounds like a child created it or someone just got it from some random name generator. Look, people pick it for a reason. They understand it, and that's just how it is. And that's how we're going to be moving forward. Maybe there'll be one day where the title that I really, really like wins. But until that day comes, we are going to split test everything to death.
Yeah, it really is the case where these split tests are so critical. And I'm the same way. I'm like sitting there, I'm like, please be this movie or this title or that title. And you just kind of go with it. But again, we're used to this. We understand this, and exactly what you said. I like making more movies more than I like being able to name whatever the name ends up being. Will we have the luxury of doing it eventually? Sure. But you know what? I feel like even then we'd still do it because we want our movie to succeed. We want to set it up with the best as possible. And real quick to kind of give you guys an idea of the actual split tests, what that looks like. All it is a Facebook ad. What we'll simply do is we'll have the same type of ad and change out one of the variables over a campaign. Basically, that will show you which ones people are engaging with. So what will we do? We have the same cover. We have the same blurb. We change the title of the name. One of those name titles wins. Sweet. There's our name title. We take that name title, same cover, same name title, change the blurb. One of the blurbs will win. Same thing for the actual ad itself of like what the cover is. We have the same name, we have the same blurb, we change the cover there. And again, Facebook will allow you can set a multiple of what you want when it comes to the ads. But what this will allow us to do is get an accurate idea of what people are going to click on. And people, if they're not clicking on your movie, I mean, you're already basically done for in that sense. So they're not even showing up to the place. Like, it's much better to have someone be like, "Oh, this is so," because they're engaging with it. They stop their day. They're doing what they're looking at. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind is, really understand that once you have a movie and once you have it there, you want to try and set it up to be as best as a win as possible. So, the last thing I kind of want to mention on this episode is with all of this talk that we've had, starting from the beginning, having this movie, this is what makes us stand out to distribution. And I would say, now that we've been going through the distribution, as you kind of mentioned, they typically be like, well, we'll do marketing and we'll do stuff like that. Then the next episode, we'll go more tactical. I just want to mention, because of this process, that's why we're so attractive to distributors. So if you want to go the distributor angle, imagine how we're coming to them with. We're coming to them with a split tested title. We're coming to them with a split tested cover and a split tested trailer. When we usually present the material, they're always like, okay, this is good to go. A lot of times what happens is they'll take a look at another, film and be like, okay, well, maybe if we change the title, we're going to have to hire someone to do the art for you, which they typically charge a lot of money for. And then we might have to recut the trailer. So, if you're a distributor, would you really want to go with the complete package of, ready to go out the door, or a project that you're going to have to kind of work on and take from there? And one, is an indie filmmaker, that's going to cost you a lot of money. So you want to talk about how having this process is actually just going to make your life a lot easier going through this whole distribution element?
Oh, 100%. And distribution companies, the first thing, they can't watch your movies. It's impossible for the distribution to watch every single movie that comes to them. So they do the same thing that a viewer would do on like Tubi or Prime or Apple TV. They're going to open your email, your submission, and they're going to look at your pitch deck. Will be the first thing to just see who's in your movie, what this movie is about. Then they're going to look at your cover art. They're going to look at your blurb. And if they like all that, they're going to watch the trailer. Then if they like the trailer, they're going to send you a message back saying, hey, this is something that interests us. Till we get the full movie. So they're not even going to take a look at this thing until they make sure that, you have star power, or you have some kind of marketing or community behind you, and that's told through your pitch deck. They're going to look at your cover and make sure it's appealing to them. It's in a genre that they've worked with before. And they're going to look at your blurb and just try and get a better feel for your movie and see if it will have a home in their place. And if they think any of that is incorrect or there's going to be an issue, it goes back to what Kel just said. Would you rather, spend all this money and man time and man hours, trying to take a movie and get it to where it needs to go as far as marketing? And the filmmaker, they're probably going to fight you every single step of the way because this is their baby. The marketing firms are going to give them titles, like I just said, that they're not going to like, and they're going to get all pissy. And it's going to be, the distribution company is going to be the middleman between the marketing company and their client, and who owns the movie. And it's just going to be a mess. And do they want to deal with all that stuff? No, they'd rather just take one movie where it's like, all right, look, This one comes prepackaged. I love the cover. I love the blurb. This is a great genre. It's very granular. We know exactly how to target this. Let's go with these guys. And I guarantee you, they will take a movie that's not as good if it has all these things, all its ducks in a row, as opposed to some movie that's really, really good, but they're going to have to fight tooth and nail with the filmmaker to change anything. And it's going to just require a lot of work. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. All my conversations with distribution companies are very easy because I come at them from a place of, hey, I'm giving you something. It's a giant snowball and you just got to push it down the hill and it'll pick up steam and go. It's built, it's optimized to sell. The click rates are very, very low, or the click rates are very, very high. The CPC is very, very low. We just need you to kind of get this up on platforms, negotiate better placement for us, and then we'll take our community with our Discord, which is a huge asset, and they're the ones that just push that snowball. As it goes down the mountain, it picks up momentum. It's a much easier conversation to say, this is my film and I named it and it's got a very wide base and wide genre. This is a rock that we have to push at Mount Everest to get over it, in order to sell it. So you got to keep that in mind. And it's going to be something that, if not only you're going to get hurt with the distribution route, but once the movie gets released, you're also going to have a hard time. So it's just take the time now to put yourself in a position to succeed, and your life is going to be so much easier.
100%. It really is that case where this is a business. And if you come to them already business minded, they're going to love that. And they're going to want to, be like, hey, let's continue to work with these guys. So that's going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. In the next episode, we're really going to dive into detail on basically what you can do tactically once the movie's out to basically promote it, and what you can do not only to build your single film, but also your community as well. As always, be sure to take a look at us online. The Discord is the place to be because we make movies for our fans, with our fans, and we always love to help other filmmakers out there. So feel free to check it out, come on by, but until then, have a good one.